Michelangelo was born on March 6, 1475 in Caprese, Italy. He lived with his mother and his father, who was actually the mayor of the town. Michelangelo was the second of 5 boys that made up the poor but proud family. When Michelangelo was still just a baby, his family moved to Florence, a different city in Italy. Being immersed in the Italian Renaissance was the perfect environment for young Michelangelo. Even as a child, all he wanted to do was paint and be an artist. His father wanted Michelangelo to go to school, but he had little interest in school. At the age of 13, he was apprenticed and worked for a painter and artist. His great skill was recognized immediately when he began working for this artist. The head of the richest and most powerful family in Italy recognized Michelangelo's talent and invited the teenager to come live at the palace and study sculpture. For 2 years, the young artist was happy, practicing what he loved to do best. In 1498, Michelangelo moved from Florence to Rome to work on one of his most famous statues. A French cardinal hired Michelangelo to make a sculpture of Mary taking her son Jesus down from the cross. Using just one large block of marble, Michelangelo sculpted a beautiful statue called Pietà. Pietà is known as one of the only sculptures that Michelangelo ever signed. Because he signed his name, it helped spread his fame as an artist. Pietà was so admired, it made Michelangelo famous when he was just 24 years old. In 1501, Michelangelo returned to Florence. He had been hired to carve a huge statue of the biblical hero David. Michelangelo is quoted as saying, "Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it." David is 14 feet tall, and Michelangelo used a massive block of marble that another artist had started to sculpt. The other artist had given up, and the stone was considered trash. Michelangelo spent 3 years chiseling that block in total secrecy. Nobody was allowed to watch him work. When Michelangelo was finished with David, he showed it to the people who hired him. They were amazed. They decided to display it in Piazza del Signore. Piazza means public square. It took dozens of men 4 days to move David to the piazza in the center of Florence. By this time, Michelangelo was famous for his sculptures. Some believed his greatest piece of art was a painting. The powerful Pope Julius II asked Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. This rather plain but important building is on the grounds of the Vatican, the home of the Roman Catholic Church. For the next 4 years, Michelangelo painted the ceiling using a process called fresco. The artist paints on wet plaster. The wall or ceiling becomes a permanent work of art. Since the ceiling of the chapel was so high, Michelangelo used bright colors that would be easier to see from the floor. When Michelangelo finished, the entire ceiling was covered with a dazzling collection of scenes from the Bible. It showed stories of the creation, of Adam and Eve, and of Noah's great flood. Everyone was amazed at Michelangelo's masterpiece. He went on to create even more wonderful things. He designed the famous St. Peter's Basilica and painted the huge Last Judgment on the wall of the Sistine Chapel. He was 88 years old when he died in Rome. Michelangelo changed the way people thought about artists. No longer were they seen as skilled craftsmen who cranked out pretty decorations. Now people knew they could be gifted geniuses, and their work could be everlasting pieces of power and beauty. Just look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Thanks for taking time to learn about the Renaissance artist Michelangelo. I'll see you next time.